That's the cue. Wonderful. Well, everybody, it being 1 p.m., I will call to order the August 16th, 2021 meeting of the Albemarle County Architectural Review Board. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with Order 20-A16, an ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. A quorum is present. Architectural Review Board members present electronically are Frank Hancock, Chris Henningsen, and myself, Dave Vanderwerf. Fred Missel and Frank Stone are absent. Opportunities for public access to this meeting are posted on the county's website at the county calendar. The public has real-time audio-visual access to this meeting over Zoom and real-time audio access over telephone. Both is provided in the lawfully posted meeting notice. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the county's website. This online meeting is a public record and subject to disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act. All speakers, when it's your turn to speak, please first state your name for the record. And for everyone participating today, please keep your line muted except when you're speaking. For applicants making presentations, note that your presentation is limited to a total of 15 minutes, which you can divide equally among your team members. Carolyn will let us know when the 15 minutes are up. So we'll turn to disclosures. Do any members have anything to disclose today?
No.
I do not.
Thank you. No, I don't either. Next up is public comment. Carolyn, are there any members of the public wishing to comment on items not on the agenda?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. Next is the consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda today. I'll start by asking if any ARB members would like to move that item from consent to regular review.
No.
No.
Okay. Great, and that item for the record, of course, is ARB-2021-76 Galaxy Farm. Great, so it sounds like it remains on the consent agenda. I guess to look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Carolyn. Will you call the vote?
Okay. Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
Mr. Vanderwerf.
Aye. Great, thank you very much. Next, we'll go to regular review items. There's one regular review item today, which Chris Taggart will present. That's item ARB 2021-77, take 5 oil change. Chris, will you make the presentation?
Yes, Dave. Second. Are you in the slideshow screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay. The proposal being reviewed today is the initial site plan to construct a 1,465 square foot oil change facility with associated site improvements. Subject property is located on the north side of Route 250 at the intersection with Pantops Corner Way. ARB reviewed a rezoning for the overall Pantops Corner site in 2013, and since 2018 has approved site plans for the nearby self-storage building, hotel, and gas station. To summarize the staff report, the focus is largely on the building materials and its location relative to adjacent structures. As viewed from the entrance corridor, the mix of wall materials establishes EIFS as the primary building material, and the proposed masonry is in a shade of black, both of which are not reflective of the traditional architecture of the county. Staff also noted that the placement of the building is not aligned with the neighboring structures along the entrance corridor, but bringing the building closer to the frontage appears to be unlikely. Regarding the initial site plan, staff is recommending approval with the recommendations listed in the staff report, addressed with the final site plan submittal. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Chris. Say, Frank, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Chris? Any?
Yeah, I don't have any questions either. Thanks, Chris.
Okay. None for me either. Thank you very much, Chris, for your presentation. Would you like to invite the applicant to make their presentation now?
All right, thank you very much. Let me share my screen here. Can you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Schaefer. I'm the studio director for the Charlottesville Office of Design Develop. Joining me on the call today is Justin Shimp with Shimp Engineering, who has performed the civil and site work for this submission, as well as Austin Cox, who is serving as the owner's representative for Take 5 Oil Change. Thank you as always to both Chris and Margaret for their helpful guidance throughout the ARB process. We appreciate the review and the thoughtful staff comments, and we look forward to gathering input and comments from the board. I'm pleased today to be presenting a proposed oil change facility along the Route 250 entrance corridor immediately east of Free Bridge as one of the remaining vacant parcels associated with the Pantops Corner development. Immediate adjacent uses along the vehicle-centric corridor include a Wawa convenience store and fuel dispensary, an O'Reilly Auto Parts store, and several automotive dealerships, including the Flo Mazda, BMW, and Volkswagen dealerships currently under construction. The site itself is smaller than many adjacent parcels, and therefore the proposed building is also comparatively smaller, but it is still within keeping of a corridor that houses various styles, forms, scales, and materials. Take 5 Oil Change is a rapidly growing national brand in the quick oil change service industry. With over 500 locations across the nation, Take 5 is interested in the Pantops Corner location because of the high daily traffic counts, the ease of access on and off a major corridor, and the adjacency to similar automotive service-based uses. Understanding the Albemarle County specific entrance corridor guidelines will alter the national brand standards for Take 5 buildings. We are grateful that the owner and the national brand have approached the design with flexibility to ensure compliance with the design standards. Take 5's interest in this location is substantiated by their willingness to alter their brand design by taking direct cues from the language found in the design guidelines. The proposed design responds directly to the entrance corridor guidelines through the following. The traditional 3-part composition found in traditional and historic structures within the area is on display here through the use of a strong, visually heavy masonry base, an eaves body, and a cornice line marked by brake metal horizontal banding and coping trim. The tower element features a traditional hipped roof clad in a traditional standing seam metal roof material. The project takes many of its cues from its immediate adjacent context, particularly the material palette and roof forms found at the adjacent Wawas, as well as the material and color palette of the adjacent O'Reillys. Being relatively small in scale, the proposed project continues to relate to a human scale and visually reduce its height by introduction of a horizontal band at the header of the 12-foot tall overhead bay doors. Appropriate amounts of glazing in a legible and orderly rhythm help maintain a project of human scale, while limiting any large swaths of blank eaves. This band, in combination with coping trim, contributes to limiting any areas of blankness above the bay doors. A simple, legible material palette defines a cohesive whole, complemented by a unifying flat roof found on the main body of the background building. Long, flat facades are eliminated by the introduction of this hipped roof tower element that elevates the roof to establish a hierarchy, creating a location for signage and breaking the plane of the main roof by extending beyond the building form by 12 inches. Given the small scale and size of the building, the effectiveness of unifying groups is limited. However, the repetition of the bay doors, the eaves columns, and the exterior lighting sconce does create a repetitive motif that contributes to the legibility of the cohesive whole and limits blankness along any facades. We appreciate the staff's comments and would like to address them quickly now before we begin to gather feedback from the board. We will be providing samples for all materials and colors as part of our final submission for site plan review. And we're happy to add the standard window glass note to our architectural drawings. A lighting plan will also be included with the final submission, being mindful of the county's entrance corridor requirements, as well as zoning requirements for lighting, including limiting light to below 20-foot candles at an individual spot, using fixtures with a color temperature below 3000 K, and employing full cutoff fixtures. We will be revising the landscape per staff's minor comments, including providing a 3.5-inch caliper trees along the Route 250 entrance corridor, and revising the plan to ensure the row of shrubs along that entrance corridor frontage remains within our parcel boundaries. A sign permit application will follow separately, though the owners are aware of the entrance corridor sign specific guidelines. We agreed with staff's comment number 4 regarding a dumpster enclosure that coordinates with the main building material palette, and we'll be proposing a 6-foot tall CMU dumpster enclosure that is clad in eaves and features composite boards doors painted in the same Sherwin-Williams deep forest brown as the proposed metal trim and exterior doors found on the main building. The dumpster enclosure will appear as an accessory structure to the main building, but will not draw attention to itself from the entrance corridor. Regarding staff comment number 5 in the mechanical equipment, the majority of the building is unconditioned and open air, and the only conditioned area of the facility are the manager's office, the waiting room, and an ADA restroom facility, all of which will be serviced by a PTAC unit found in the facade facing away from the entrance corridor and therefore not visible. Electrical service and meters will be located on the wall facing O'Reilly's and will also be limited from visibility due to the proximity of the adjacent structure. Finally, we are interested to hear the board's thoughts on comment number 2 regarding revising the mix of wall materials to make brick the primary building material. We incorporated the brick to help establish the masonry base of the building and then used the eaves field to serve as the body of the building. To us, the breakdown of the material was appropriate for the entrance corridor guidelines, and we took extra care to show score joints in the eaves in thoughtful, purposeful locations to incorporate a more panelized look that takes precedence from metal panels found throughout the adjacent automotive dealerships. A concern in going to all brick would be that the visually heavy masonry base that is being established may be lost. However, we do acknowledge there are opportunities to either accentuate the tower element or complement the composition through the addition of more brick. If the board feels staff's commented is warranted, we do have some options we would like to gather feedback on, given the preliminary submission not requiring any action from the board. And so with that, I'll conclude by expressing our gratitude again to county staff and the board. We look forward to hearing any comments you may have, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Nice presentation and nice materials as always. Let's see, I guess, Chris, do you want to, you have any questions?
Just one, and I apologize because it probably is shown on the elevations, but the intermediate band, the horizontal band that's below the roof coping, that secondary one, is that also EFIS, or is that brake metal to match the roof band?
That would be brake metal.
Okay.
And it would protrude from the eaves just slightly, a couple inches.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks.
Frank, any questions?
Thanks, Kevin. Great presentation. Just a quick question on the site plan. I guess, space between the building and 250, kind of that turnaround where you would come back around. Is there any way to increase landscaped area there, or is that kind of maxed out from the turning radii you need?
That would be in this location here. Let me go to the landscape plan actually.
Yes, where your cursor is now, just as you exit the building.
Here.
Is that all necessary just to turn there, or is there any way to decrease the amount of asphalt and increase?
I'll let Justin jump in here. I'll punt to him on the turning radius questions.
Yes, 1 second. Yeah, Justin Shimp here, the engineer for the project. So the turning radius, I did not measure those, but I think it comes from there. It's actually we're short by like 5 feet of the company's desired kind of standard. It is, if you have a couple cars coming out, I think if somebody, you want somebody to be able to pull forward, like if they have to pull out and kind of walk in and pay or something like that, and then a car come out and around them. I think that's the origin of that depth. So that it's, maybe it could be cut a foot or two, but I think if it's 50 feet. So if a car sticks out 20 feet, you have to come around them 30 feet. It's probably pretty tight. We do actually have a fair amount of landscape room, really. If you look at the plan here, there's, I think 20 feet or so, probably more space maybe than the Wawa had. So we do need to pull our shrubs in so they're on our property. But I think we were able to strike a reasonable balance here. But I think the reason for that sort of elongated pavement area is so somebody can pull out and you can kind of pull around them to keep traffic moving.
Thank you. That was the only question I had, Dane.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Frank, and appreciate your asking that. I guess to tag on to it, is there room between sort of the northern drive-through lane and then the northernmost return drive lane for any kind of landscape or planted area to reduce the overall asphalt, effectively from that area drain back to the building in the zone?
So is that, so it's a small landscape island, perhaps right in front of the office we're talking about then?
Yes, yeah, I wondered, yeah, if maybe part of that asphalt is not necessary and there might be a chance to reduce the overall expanse of it.
Yeah, I think I need to double check with the site development, but I think we probably could put a little landscape island after, maybe Kevin could remind me of the doors. I think the door comes in that side where the sidewalk is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. But it is kind of centered right there. So
there could potentially be a small, right. So for example, directly in front of that wall, not necessarily there as easily, but really in the front of that,
yeah,
we could have a small landscape island in that zone. And likewise behind where there's the AC unit vent is there, I think there's some space for a little landscape island. So to your left there, okay, right there, I don't, no one's going to drive right there. So I think that could be developed into a small landscape island where someone comes out and around basically.
Okay. Great. It seems like it might be a nice way to relieve a bit the expansive asphalt there and maybe create a little more landscaping and buffering to the building. But one related question is, does that return drive lane have to be on the north side of the building, or is there any chance that it would work equally well on the south? I'm just thinking that might allow the building to be a little closer to the entry drive to the development, and it would potentially remove vehicular traffic from the pedestrian approach to the door.
So basically mirror it, essentially you drive around, so you drive in. Again, I want to talk to the developer about that. I think the only thing about that is it puts you sort of in a backward circulation pattern from what a driver's used to. If it's a one-way loop, basically, you kind of come in, you stay to the right, and you swing around. So I think it's probably just an operational preference.
Yeah, that's that way.
It could be done, I think, but operationally, I think that
it would create sort of a crossing motion.
Some confusion. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's just a cleaner vehicle circulation.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's all of my questions. Let's see, although I know you mentioned, Kevin, you had some options. We haven't been into discussion yet about materials. Certainly, personally, I think it would be interesting and worthwhile to consider some alternatives to EFIS and adjust the overall proportion. We've recently, I think it was a Jiffy Lube and a Sleep Number installation. I think both of which may have had some EFIS, but significantly less than is proposed here. So be interested to see the options that you might have.
okay, yeah, that sounds great. Happy to show. One of the things we were considering is how to keep the legibility of the kind of the dark, visually heavy base that I keep referring to while introducing a brick field. And then I think there is an opportunity to use the material to elevate the tower element and continue to establish that hierarchy. One of the things we're still discussing internally does the brick go on the tower element, or does the eaves go on the tower element? Does the eaves go on the main body of the building? We chose on this representation to show a gray brick that would be on the main body of the building to further limit the amount of eaves we were having. And one of the things that the ownership group asked me to discuss with you would be maybe the appropriateness or the acceptability of a thin brick. This is a product that we're looking at from Glengarry, a thin brick veneer. Looks like a brick, but is just a much thinner brick version. Glengarry is a relatively high quality brick. This would potentially be a brick that we would suggest for this color palette that still allows for the legibility of the dark masonry base. And the reason one reason that we felt the thin brick could be worthwhile and appropriate was that then we could have a water table at our base that kind of accentuated that base element and protruded proud of this main wall brick. So those are the systems we're considering and sort of the application that we're considering. Going back to the thin brick in the body of the project. We'd love board's input on that or thoughts on that.
Great, thank you. I guess Frank and Chris, any immediate thoughts?
Yeah, man, would you mind zooming in a little bit? It's tough for me to see.
Yeah, sorry. We tried to put 4 on a single page here, but
Thank you.
it's a little hard to see, but we would have a water table brick here around the base, and then the brick would be basically everywhere, the main body.
Can you clarify? I think the higher end thin brick systems have this, but would this have the corner pieces where it at the corners looks like a full size brick? Or do you know, Kevin?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can do a little bit of research and ensure that, but I know what you're talking about in terms of the corner bricks that make it look like the real bricks.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, thin brick, it's a real brick and it has a real joint. So whether it's 4 inches nominally thick or 1 inch thick, it's what you see from the surface is the same. The corners are the only place that you could kind of tip your hand as far as it not being a real brick. So just my personal opinion is that, I would have absolutely no problem with a thin brick as opposed to a full brick veneer, because at that point you're just talking about the composition of the wall, not what you perceive as the material of the wall. So that's just my opinion on it.
Well, I'm inclined to agree with you, Chris, and appreciate you asking. I share the same question about the corners, and I think as long as they can be convincing that it's a full dimensional brick, and they appear to be in the marketing material that Kevin is showing at the moment, would have no concern about that. I think for my take, if the facade facing the EC could be, fully brick or even more fully brick with brick at the tower element and the walls, I think that might be still even more appropriate in the interest of economy, to the extent the facade's not visible from the EC. I would not object to the applicant including some EFS there as a way to manage the overall material palette and budget.
Noted. One of the challenges that comes once you have a brick element on these tower is now we've got to structurally support that clear span. But obviously, if it's the thin set brick, that gets a lot more easy and simple. We were at one time we had talked about the dark brick really taking over that whole entrance tower element, and that became pretty challenging and costly from a structural perspective. So,
Well, and if it were helpful in the same way that the panel behind the Take 5 signage might be ephes and framed into the overall brick tower, you could panelize potentially the sides.
Okay. Yep.
Of the tower. If the corner is red as brick, I think that would be, more appropriate and traditional for our area.
okay. Yeah, these elements here became the brick.
Mhm. Right, but I think, overall, the form, scale, massing, hierarchy, they've done a good job with that. So appreciate your willingness and the applicant's willingness to consider further refining the material. Are there any other, I guess we've entered discussion for a bit. Are there other items you'd like us to discuss or consider today, Kevin?
I think all the other comments were relatively straightforward. If there are any thoughts or concerns about the dumpster enclosure, that was one thing that was still a little bit open-ended from staff's comments.
I don't know, Frank, you want to lead off?
One thought on the dumpster enclosures is it tall enough? 6 feet tall.
We
Verify
can go
that
to
with your.
We can go to 8 feet, I think, is probably more standard and appropriate.
And that could be depending on, what goes in there. But no, I appreciate it. I appreciate you showing an option too. I think that the option you showed with that additional brick, I think is more appropriate. But I don't have any other questions. If we're in, are we in discussion, Dave? Are we still in?
Well, I just wanted to see if there were any other items to discuss. I guess before we enter discussion formally, I should ask Carolyn if there are any members of the public wishing to comment.
There is not.
Okay, thank you. Then yeah, certainly we could enter discussion. So.
Yeah, I think great presentation. I'll go ahead, Dave. I appreciate the economy of the site plan. If we could get a little landscaping in per Dave's suggestion, I think that would be nice. It's just a large expanse of asphalt that, it's not going to have any parked cars on it. It's more, that might be noticeable and might have an impact on the corridor. But yeah, I agree with Dave, your comments on, the massing, the scale. I think the composition is nice. It's very similar to the Wawa. I don't know how visible it will be just with its size and the building it's right next to, and there's a decent amount of landscaping, from the Wawa site coming down the hill. So, yeah, and I agree with staff's comments, but nice presentation, and thank you for your willingness to work with us and share alternatives.
Super, thanks, Frank. Chris?
Yeah, I share the compliment on the quality of the presentation as usual. And I guess to address a staff comment that we hadn't talked about, I personally am fine with the use of the non-traditional brick color. I think, just the use of brick is a nod to the traditional materials of the area. So I think using the gray brick or a combination of the dark gray and a lighter brick color would be appropriate. And also to kind of share my agreement with Dade's comment about the massing, which I think is done very well for this application. So that's about all for me.
Great, thank you, Chris. Well, just add that I agree with my colleagues. A nice presentation, and appreciate the flexibility and willingness to work within the county guidelines and adjust the palette for staff's comments. I think, like Chris, I'm comfortable with the use of gray brick and with some other contrasting color in the other brick above that to preserve that strong sense of the base. Yeah, so look forward very much to seeing the next updated submission. So are we ready to go to a motion and review of the staff's comments? I guess, Chris, can you pull those up?
I might need to stop sharing.
Thank you, Kevin. Great. Chris, may I ask if you could zoom in a little? I'm working with a small screen.
Yeah.
Super.
Are you able to view it now?
I am, yes, yeah. And let's see, are there comments included here regarding the architecture for the applicant's information? Are there any that we want to amend or add?
There's this general one regarding revising the wall, mixture wall. Not sure if it needs to be.
Yep, so I think that one can remain. I don't know if we want to add that thin brick is acceptable, provided that the corners, appear as full dimensional brick.
Provided the corners again.
Appear as full dimensional bricks. I don't know, Chris, would you word that any other way?
Yeah, I think you hit it.
Okay. And in terms of I guess we're approving the site plan today, is that correct? So do we, if regarding the island and planting, is that something that we need to add, or we would add that as a recommendation or a requirement?
Maybe.
See that. So okay. This is initial site plan, so we're going to see the final. So should we just add an item 10?
Yeah.
Or 9C is fine, yeah. Either way. Oh no, 10 makes more sense.
Yeah, 9's related to the signs.
Yeah. So I guess create a landscaped island between the travel lanes adjacent to the office and waiting area. Frank, do you have any recommendations for what to consider for that area, or Chris?
I think that the only thing is, should it be consider adding?
Yeah, that would be fine. And do we need to add a comment about the height of the dumpster enclosure? Or is that already covered?
It might just need to be ensure dumpster enclosure, wall height exceeds dumpster height, or the dumpster is fully concealed. I think, yeah.
And I guess we didn't discuss dumpster enclosure material. I don't know whether others agree it would be preferable if it could be brick if exposed. I mean, if it's heavily landscaped and screened, it may be less of a concern, and thin brick is certainly probably aesthetically okay, but practically it might be worth considering dimensional brick if in that area, just because of the sort of abuse that it might take. But I don't know, Frank and Chris, any thoughts about the dumpster enclosure material?
Yeah, or maybe just that it matched the
Mhm.
building material.
Yeah.
or Come from that palette of materials.
But yeah, I think that's well said.
So take this out or add to that sentence.
Well, actually, I think, yeah.
Oh,
that's a good-
actually, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
That's
Chris,
good.
you've got
Yeah.
it covered. Yep. Great, you're well ahead of us. Thank you. Great, anything else folks would like to adjust? Yeah, okay, well, do we have a motion?
I'll move to forward the recommendations outlined in the staff report to the agent for the site review committee as follows. Item number 2, amended to include thin brick is acceptable, provided that the corners appear as full dimensional brick. And add item number 10, consider adding a landscape island between the travel lanes adjacent to the offices and the east end of the site. And add item number 11, ensure that the dumpster enclosure wall height exceeds the height of the dumpster.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Chris. Carolyn, would you call the vote?
Yes, Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate the feedback.
Thank you for your presentation. All right, moving on to other business. We, I believe, have just one item, approval of the minutes for July 19th, 2021.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
I'll second.
Thank you, Frank. Carolyn?
All right, Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, everyone. Great, well, before we move to the next meeting and adjournment, anything Frank or Chris you'd like to address today?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Great, all right, well, thank you very much to everyone and Chris and Carolyn for your time. So our next meeting is September 7th, 2021. That's a Tuesday meeting. Frank and Chris, are you available on that day?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just double checking. It's the... Yeah, I believe I should be too. Great, so we'll have a quorum and maybe even be complimented by Fred and Frank as well. Great, well, with that, we'll adjourn. Our next meeting is Tuesday, September 7th at 2021. Thank you very much, everybody.
You have a good one.
All right.